Imagine for a moment that your entire life, with all its achievements, pain, doubts, and hopes, could be altered in just 60 seconds. 1 minute, the time it takes to take a deep breath, the interval between two heartbeats, the brief turn of a clock hand. Now think, what if those 60 seconds could change not just one detail, but the invisible structure that sustains your entire reality? This provocation seems exaggerated, almost absurd. But Nikola Tesla, one of history's greatest visionaries, believed that the essence of existence lies not in what we see, but in what we feel and emit. He said that to understand the universe, it was necessary to understand energy, frequency, and vibration. And when he spoke these words, he wasn't just talking about lightning, storms, or the electromagnetic fields that illuminate cities. He was talking about us, about me, about you, about the invisible network that connects every mind and every heart to the fabric of the cosmos. Tesla saw thought as a real electrical wave, not an abstraction. For him, each idea traverses space like a current, capable of interfering with the invisible and reorganizing what we call reality. The simple act of thinking about something was not a reverie of the mind. It was a silent command sent to the field, which responds with mathematical precision. And this view confronts us with an uncomfortable question. If our thoughts are waves and our emotions are fields, to what extent is what we experience truly chosen by us, or merely a reflection of the frequencies we sustain without realizing it? Now imagine the weight of this reasoning. You wake up with your mind laden with worries, your chest tightening, and you surrender to the feeling of scarcity. This vibration is like a transmitter tuned to a specific frequency. The universe, indifferent to justifications and personal dramas, only returns echoes of this same energy. Debt attracts more debt. Fear attracts circumstances that confirm fear. Rejection attracts new episodes of rejection. But if, in just 60 seconds, you could change the tone of this transmission, the response would be immediate. Tesla believed that the field doesn't take long to react. It's instantaneous, like a light bulb that turns on the moment an electric current passes through the filament. But is it really that simple? And if so, why do we remain trapped in the same cycles, repeating the same mistakes, feeling the same pain? Perhaps because it's easier to remain in the known than to risk the unknown. It's more comfortable to accept life as a fixed destiny than to assume that everything we experience is a direct reflection of what we emit. This reflection is uncomfortable because it robs us of the most convenient excuse, blaming chance, society, destiny, or even God. If Tesla is right, reality isn't happening to us, but faithfully responding to what we vibrate. And here arises a powerful micro-conflict. If our entire life is a reflection of our frequencies, who are we really, creators or victims? Tesla's idea forces us to face the possibility that the pain we carry may not just be a consequence of something external, but the result of an internal field we haven't learned to master. It's not easy to accept this. It's painful to think that our limitations, failures, and fears are, on some level, self-attracted. But at the same time, it's liberating, because it means the key to change isn't outside but within. Simply adjusting your frequency is enough. Have you ever wondered why some days seem to conspire against you? Your alarm doesn't go off, traffic jams, someone criticizes you for no reason, and even before noon you feel like the day is lost. It's as if life has decided to play with your patience. But is it coincidence? Or could it be that, upon waking up filled with anxiety, you already started the morning emitting a frequency that magnetized all these events? The opposite also happens. There are days when everything flows almost magically. You meet the right people at the right time, receive unexpected messages that solve long-standing problems, and feel an inexplicable lightness. Tesla didn't see it as luck. For him, it was just physics, the law of vibration in action. The universe responds not to what you desire in words, but to what you sustain in silent energy. This perspective is uncomfortable because it exposes us. How many times have you repeated that you wanted prosperity, but harbored a feeling of scarcity deep inside? How many times have you asked for love, but continued to vibrate with fear of rejection? How many times have you called for peace while harboring resentment? The field reacts not to words, but to what pulses within. And here arises a provocation. If it's possible to change what you emit in just 60 seconds, why haven't we really tried? Tesla spent his life facing this same dilemma. His ideas were so bold that many considered him crazy. He spoke of wireless energy, long-distance communication, and machines powered by the universal field. While society laughed, he remained steadfast, confident in his vision. The price was high: loneliness, rejection, and incomprehension. But he preferred the solitude of those who dare to vibrate at their own frequency to the security of clinging to common frequencies. His life reminds us that changing our tune requires courage, and perhaps that's why so many of us remain trapped in the same cycle, because change requires facing the emptiness that arises when we leave behind old beliefs, old pains, and old identities. Think about it. Wouldn't it be easier to live complaining about life than to accept that you have the power to transform it in a moment? Wouldn't it be more comfortable to blame circumstances than to take responsibility for your own vibration? Tesla knew that humanity preferred to believe in external forces because it absolved us of responsibility. But he insisted, reality is shaped from the inside out. And that's precisely where our greatest power and, at the same time, our greatest fear resides. Now, allow yourself to feel this paradox. If you could change your frequency in 60 seconds, it would mean that until now, everything you've experienced has also been a reflection of what you've emitted. This idea is disturbing because it eliminates the victim narrative, but it's also empowering because it gives you back the key you may have always sought outside yourself. The key isn't in changing the world, but in changing the invisible field you sustain. And here I leave you with a question that opens the door to the next step. If every emotion is a wave, if every thought is an electric current, what exactly have you been transmitting to the universe without realizing it? And even more, what would happen if starting today, you consciously decided to change that frequency and sustain a new vibration, minute after minute, until it became your new identity? This is the provocation Tesla left as his legacy, that reality is a perfect mirror, and the reflection you see is merely the wave you yourself chose to emit. The mirror stands before you, and the question that remains echoing is, what image will it show when you dare to change the frequency? Imagine for a moment that you could look at your own life as if gazing into a large, invisible mirror. Everything you see reflected in this mirror is not the work of chance, nor the result of a fixed destiny that governs your choices, but simply the return of what you silently emit. Nikola Tesla believed that the universe does not judge, punish, or reward. It only responds. Life, according to his vision, is an exact response to the frequency we sustain. Fear attracts circumstances that reinforce fear. Trust opens previously blocked passages. Gratitude multiplies unexpected events that seem miraculous. This logic is simple, yet disturbing. You do not experience what you say you want, but what you vibrate without realizing it. And perhaps this is the greatest human conflict, because most of us desire a higher reality, but continue to transmit signals of scarcity, insecurity, and doubt. Think about everyday situations. You wake up late, your mind racing, preoccupied with bills, obligations, and seemingly insoluble problems. When you leave the house, the first person you meet barely acknowledges your greeting. In traffic, a driver cuts you off, and you react angrily. At work, someone makes a common criticism, but you take it as a personal attack. At the end of the day, you feel like the universe has risen against you. But if you look closely, you'll see that it wasn't the world that decided to conspire. It was the frequency you maintained from the first minutes of the day that shaped the entire sequence. Like a radio station, your mind tuned into a tension-laden band, and everything else responded in tune. This is the vibrational mirror Tesla described. Now imagine another scenario. You wake up and, before getting up, take a deep breath and remember something simple you're grateful for. The air in your lungs, the chance for another day, the smile of someone you love, or even the opportunity to try again. Within seconds, your body calms down, your heart finds a new rhythm, and your brain sends different signals throughout your system. As you leave home, you pass the same person, but this time, you exchange smiles. The traffic still lingers, but instead of irritation, you turn on a favorite song and transform the time into a break. The criticism at work continues, but now it's understood as an invitation to improve. And at the end of the day, instead of feeling like the universe was cruel, you realize that small gestures created a succession of lighter events. Nothing changed on the outside, but everything changed on the inside, and that was enough to alter your perceived reality. This is the power of frequency. Tesla used to say that human beings are living antennas, transmitters and receivers unaware of the field in which they are immersed. For him, thoughts are electrical waves, emotions are magnetic fields, and the combination of the two generates a unique vibrational signature. It is this signature that life reflects back. The radio metaphor helps to understand. No matter how much you want to hear a different song, until you change your tune, you will only hear the same repetitive sound. Most people spend their entire lives stuck to the same station, repeating the same stories, cultivating the same emotions, attracting the same results. The cycle repeats itself because the frequency doesn't change. This is a painful point, but also a liberating one. Painful because it means that much of the difficult things we experience were attracted by our own vibration. Liberating because it means we hold the key to transformation. If reality is merely a mirror, then the power to change lies in adjusting what we transmit. And this change doesn't require decades. Tesla believed that the field responds instantly, like a light bulb that turns on the instant an electric current passes through it. The big question is, do we have the courage to sustain a new frequency? Perhaps you've felt in ordinary situations how vibration changes everything. Imagine a room full of people. Someone enters carrying anger and tension. Without saying a word, their presence weighs heavily. Others feel uncomfortable, tense, and soon the atmosphere becomes charged. Now imagine another person entering the same room but radiating sincere joy and tranquility. People smile without realizing it. Shoulders relax and even conversations change tone. No words need be spoken. The frequency speaks first. This phenomenon is not mystical. It is human. It is the vibrational mirror in action. Tesla intuited that every human being carries this capacity, but few realize the responsibility it brings. Think about relationships. How many times have you suspected someone would disappoint you, only to find that shortly after, that's exactly what happened? Often it wasn't a coincidence, but a reflection of vibrational expectation. The fear of being betrayed creates a field of distrust that consciously or unconsciously alters the relationship's dynamics. The partner feels this energy and, even unintentionally, begins to respond to the scenario created. On the other hand, when someone enters a relationship with trust and clarity, they create a space where the other feels seen and respected, which fosters harmony. It doesn't mean there won't be challenges, but the dominant vibration opens or closes paths. This is Tesla translated into practical life. It's not rational desire that guides the experience. It's the unconscious frequency that drives it. Another example is in the financial field. Someone who constantly says, "I don't have money, life is scarce, things never work out for me," is feeding a vibrational field that reinforces these very limitations. Opportunities arise, but they don't see them. Money arrives, but quickly slips away because its frequency is one of loss. Someone who cultivates an internal sense of abundance, even in small ways, transmits a different signature to the universe. This person perceives pathways, recognizes creative solutions, and attracts people who support them. The difference lies not only in the external conditions, but in the vibration each sustains. Tesla saw this dynamic as a law as precise as gravity. This reflection brings with it an inevitable conflict. If everything is resonance, why do most people remain at a low frequency? Perhaps because change is uncomfortable. Sustaining a new vibration requires breaking old patterns, confronting painful memories, and abandoning beliefs that have haunted us for years. It's easier to repeat, "Life is hard," than to challenge the mind to believe otherwise. It's easier to complain about circumstances than to accept that, on some level, we ourselves create them. Tesla knew this, and therefore said that humanity was still in its infancy when it came to understanding invisible forces. For him, the true future would not lie in external machines, but in the ability to control internal machines. Thought, emotion, vibration. But then comes a surprise. Change isn't as far-fetched as it seems. You don't need to transform your entire life at once. All it takes is a few moments of awareness, 60 seconds of focused breathing, a lofty thought, a reminder of gratitude. This small gesture is like changing the radio station. The frequency shifts, and the universe responds. What seemed like a coincidence begins to reveal itself as a consequence, an unexpected message, a solution that comes out of nowhere. an unlikely encounter that opens doors. All this begins to happen when you decide to change what you transmit. The practice isn't about controlling the world, but about tuning your own antenna. Of course, the mind resists. Habit is powerful. It will tell you it's no use, that nothing changes, that it's better to surrender. But that's precisely where exercise comes in. Just as muscles need training, vibration needs conscious repetition. Tesla, who faced ridicule and rejection, knew that maintaining his vision amidst disbelief was a daily test. And perhaps this is the greatest lesson. It's not just about changing the frequency for an instant, but about sustaining it until it becomes natural. The universe responds to what is constant, not what is fleeting. Now think back to your life. How many times have you felt trapped in an endless cycle? How many times have you wondered why the same difficulties keep returning, even after so much effort? Perhaps the answer lies in the frequency you maintain without realizing it. What if all this isn't punishment or bad luck, but simply a reflection of a season in which you still insist on remaining? This possibility may be disturbing, but it also liberates. Because if repetition is the result of frequency, change is the result of choice. And every choice can begin in 60 seconds. This is the provocation Tesla leaves us. Life is a vibrational mirror. You don't control the reflection with your hands, but by adjusting what it emits. The mirror doesn't invent images, it simply reflects them. If you don't like what you see, it's not the mirror that needs to be broken, but the frequency that needs to be transformed. The question that remains is simple and profound. What are you reflecting now? And even more, will you have the courage to change your tune and discover what reality reveals itself when your inner antenna dares to transmit a new vibration? Have you ever stopped to consider that perhaps the greatest prisons in your life are not outside, but within you, functioning like invisible currents that repeat themselves day after day? Nikola Tesla believed that human beings are transmitters and receivers of waves, and that most of our existence is guided by an unconscious field operating in the background. This field, formed by recurring thoughts and emotions, creates a kind of dominant frequency that becomes the pattern of your reality. The most intriguing thing is that this is not just a psychological detail, but a true energetic mechanism. Just as a poorly tuned antenna only picks up noise, our misdirected mind generates a life filled with repetitions, difficulties, and emotional noise. And here arises the first provocation. Could what you call bad luck be just the echo of a frequency you insist on sustaining without realizing it? When a child grows up hearing that life is hard, that money doesn't grow on trees, that you shouldn't trust anyone, these phrases don't disappear over time. They settle like hidden codes in the unconscious, shaping the way the child perceives and reacts to the world. Tesla understood the unconscious as a kind of silent laboratory that never shuts down. Each recorded word, each intensely lived emotion, each repeated experience builds a vibratory signature that will continue to emit signals even when we no longer remember their origin. And the universal field responds, attracting situations that confirm that programming. The fascinating thing is to realize that we are not talking about mysticism, but about a mechanism very similar to electricity. Just as invisible currents illuminate entire cities, mental and emotional currents structure entire destinies. But what if all of this were just an illusion created by the mind? What if we were nothing more than hostages to collective beliefs that have become accepted truths, but which could be undone in a single act of consciousness? This pattern breaking forces you to reflect. To what extent are the stories you repeat daily about love, money, health, yourself, indeed your own? And to what extent are they inherited echoes of ancient voices that still vibrate within you? This question opens the door to an uncomfortable realization. Much of your life may not be yours, but the result of a field programmed before you were even aware of what it means to choose. Modern science offers clues that directly align with Tesla's vision. Neuroscience studies show that about 90% of the thoughts we have today are the same as those of yesterday. This means that most people live as if trapped in an automatic cycle of repetition. The mind, like a record player needle that never leaves the same track, insists on playing the same melody, even if it's painful. And the body responds, releasing the same hormones, repeating the same emotional patterns, and reinforcing the same reactions. The result? A reality that seems immutable, but is actually merely the consequence of a never-interrupted frequency. Tesla saw this as a waste of the greatest human power, the ability to generate new frequencies and reorganize one's life. But why is it so difficult to break this cycle? Perhaps because the habit, even when painful, is comfortable. Familiar pain is easier to bear than the uncertainty of the unknown. How many times have you sabotaged yourself by believing you weren't capable, unworthy, or ready? How many opportunities have you let slip by because fear spoke louder than courage? These moments are not mere lapses of weakness, but symptoms of an unconscious vibration that insists on keeping you stuck at the same level. The question is, how long will you continue to accept a life defined by inherited frequencies, instead of consciously creating your own tuning? Now imagine the following scene. Two people walking down the same street. One is immersed in thoughts of fear and distrust. Every shadow seems threatening. Every strange look seems judgmental. Every sound is interpreted as danger. The other walks confidently, openly, and calmly. For her, the same street is merely a bright passageway, full of possibilities. The environment is the same, but each person's reality is completely different. Tesla argued that this is not coincidence, but evidence. The universe doesn't show objective truth. It reflects back sustained frequency. What you perceive as reality is, in fact, what you transmit. What if the greatest enemy of your evolution isn't fear itself, but adapting to it? What if the real obstacle isn't pain, but the familiarity with it that makes you accept it as a natural part of your life? This question breaks the pattern because it forces you to realize that perhaps you're not bound by iron chains, but by chains made of emotional and mental habits that could be broken if you had the courage to shift your vibration. Tesla described the human being as an electrical machine that needs constant adjustment. When the current is irregular, the entire system suffers. But when there is harmony, the energy expands in all directions, creating flow and resonance. He saw emotions as real currents, as powerful as any electrical discharge. Fear is a contraction circuit, which reduces the field and attracts blockages. Trust and joy are expansion circuits, which expand the field and attract possibilities. This view presents us with a dilemma. If we already know that different emotions create different frequencies, why do we insist on keeping the exposed wires of fear, guilt, and insecurity connected to our internal systems? Everyday life gives us subtle proof of this. Think about the feeling of entering a tense room where no one has said anything, yet the air feels heavy. Or, conversely, a place where there is joy and harmony, and you automatically feel lighter. These experiences show that vibration is more real than any words. But here arises an uncomfortable question. If we are so sensitive to other people's frequencies, how often do we fail to realize that we are also constant emitters, influencing others with what we carry? How many times has the environment you've entered become more tense or lighter simply because of the energy you've brought without realizing it? This point brings us to another aspect of Tesla's vision, the collective unconscious. He believed that not just individuals but entire groups, cities, and even humanity as a whole emit frequencies that shape collective realities. This is why wars, economic crises, and social conflicts seem to repeat themselves in historical cycles. These are not just political events, but vibrational reflections of a collective field that sustains fear, scarcity, or hostility. And here arises the question that may shake your perception. If even the collective is subject to these laws, what kind of field do you reinforce every day with your thoughts and emotions? It is in this reflection that the role of consciousness becomes crucial. Breaking patterns is not a magical act. It is an act of courage. It is choosing, even in the face of habit, to take a deep breath and change frequency. It is sustaining a new vibration until it becomes natural. Tesla believed that the universe reacts immediately, but that we, out of habit, give up too quickly. We want instant results without realizing that the field responds to what is consistent. It is not enough to change for seconds. It is necessary to maintain it until the reflection in the mirror adjusts. But how do you maintain a high vibration amid real difficulties? How do you sustain confidence in the face of debt, health problems, or family conflicts? Here's the pattern breaker that may surprise you. It's not about denying reality, but about not allowing it to determine your frequency. The situation is a given, but vibration is a choice. The difference between the two is abysmal. A given can change, but the frequency you emit in response to it determines whether the change will be toward expansion or contraction. What would happen if, instead of reacting automatically, You started using each challenge as an opportunity to reinforce your new vibration. Transit wouldn't just be a delay, but an invitation to breathe. Criticism wouldn't just be an insult, but a trigger to practice clarity and confidence. Lack of resources wouldn't just be a limitation, but a fertile ground for developing creativity and openness to new solutions. This shift in perspective isn't naivety, it's applied vibrational science. It's what Tesla tried to show us, that life is less about what happens and more about how often we interpret it. Ultimately, the big question is, how many years of your life have you spent repeating the same stories, feeding the same fields, reaping the same rewards? And how long will you continue to believe this is just bad luck or destiny? Reality, as Tesla argued, is plastic, moldable, sensitive to the slightest frequency adjustment. But it only responds to those who dare to take control of their own inner antenna. The field is always resonating. The question is, are you ready to change the signal you transmit? Have you ever noticed how some events in life seem to defy common logic, as if there were an invisible thread connecting seemingly disconnected events? Nikola Tesla believed that this thread is not an incomprehensible mystery, but a vibrational network that responds to laws still little explored. He saw the human being as a living antenna, constantly emitting and receiving signals that shape reality in subtle and profound ways. This vision may seem distant, but one only needs to look at some everyday examples and some surprising data to realize that perhaps Tesla was right all along. What would happen if we accepted that our lives are not just a sequence of random events, but an invisible dance of frequencies? A study by the HeartMath Institute revealed that the human heart generates an electromagnetic field up to 60 times more intense than the brain. This field can be measured several meters away from the body and changes according to the emotional state. Emotions like anger and fear produce incoherent, chaotic waves, while gratitude and joy generate harmonic, coherent waves. This isn't philosophy, it's measurable science. Now consider the implication. Every time you feel something, your entire body becomes a transmitter that influences not only you, but the space and people around you. How many environments have you felt changed by the mere entrance of someone? And how many environments have you altered without realizing it? Tesla claimed that humanity had not yet understood the magnitude of this mechanism, but that in the future, we would understand that emotions are forces as real as electricity. Everyday stories reveal how this dynamic works silently. Imagine a man who wakes up every day thinking about debts and failures. His body awakens in a state of alert, releasing stress hormones that reinforce his anxiety. At work, any criticism feels like an accusation, reinforcing his insecurity. At the end of the day, he confirms the prophecy he already carried that morning. Life is hard. Nothing works out. Now consider the contrast. Another man in equally difficult circumstances decides to start the day with a minute of deep breathing and gratitude. He doesn't deny his debts, but vibrates at a different frequency. When criticism arises, he receives it as advice. When someone crosses his path, he smiles. Small actions change the vibrational signature, and the field responds with more favorable situations. The external scenario may seem similar, but sustained frequency alters the results. The question is, which of these reflexes have you been nurturing daily? And here's a curious fact. It's estimated that a person has between 60,000 and 70,000 thoughts a day, and about 90% of them are the same as the day before. This repetition creates a vibrational pattern so stable that life ends up becoming an echo. Isn't it strange to think that most of what you call reality may be nothing more than the repetition of the same frequencies you haven't dared to change? Tesla said that humanity's true prison wasn't made of bars, but of vibrational habits repeated ad nauseum. Modern science confirms this by showing how the brain creates neural pathways that reinforce emotional patterns. The more you feel something, the easier it is to feel it again. It's like a paved road. The more you travel down it, the harder it is to get off. But what if it were possible to open new roads, new connections, new pathways? That's where neuroplasticity comes in. Research shows that by introducing new habits, especially those linked to positive emotions and visualization, the brain literally creates new connections. This means we're not condemned to repeat the same emotional pathways. Just as muscles can be strengthened, emotions can be trained. Tesla, even before these discoveries, intuited this when he said that the human brain was an electrical machine in constant interaction with the universal field. For him, the key was learning to consciously direct this energy, rather than leaving it trapped in unconscious repetitions. An unexpected example comes from experiments on the placebo effect. People who received pills without any active ingredient, but believed they were taking powerful medications, often experienced real results. Pain disappeared, symptoms improved, and even chronic conditions regressed. How can this be explained? The body reacted not to the medication, but to the vibration of belief. Tesla saw this as proof that thought is not passive, but an electric current capable of reorganizing biological matter. If the mind is capable of influencing the body in this way, why couldn't it also influence the external field that surrounds us? Another intriguing fact, in quantum physics experiments, the so-called observer effect showed that subatomic particles change behavior when observed. The mere presence of consciousness alters the outcome. This means that reality, at its most fundamental level, is not static, but plastic, sensitive to the interaction of the mind. Tesla predicted something similar when he stated that the energy of thought is one of the most underestimated forces in the universe. He wasn't speaking metaphorically, but literally, something that only decades later began to be confirmed by scientific experiments. Now, think of life as a symphony. Every thought is a note, every emotion is a chord, and every gesture is a rhythm. When these notes are out of alignment, what emerges is noise, disharmony, and chaos. But when you consciously choose to tune your frequency, the music changes. The flow of life becomes more coherent. Encounters happen at the right time. Doors open where walls once stood. It's not that the world decided to help you, but that resonance began to attract higher reflections. And herein lies a profound dilemma. If it's so possible to change the music, why do most of us keep repeating noises? Perhaps the answer lies in the fear of emptiness. When you abandon an old vibration, a space remains open. It is in this space that many retreat, because the unknown is more frightening than the known pain. Tesla experienced this in his own journey. Rejected by colleagues, discredited by investors, called crazy by much of society, he remained faithful to the frequency of his vision. He preferred the discomfort of solitude to the comfort of repetition. And that is what makes his presence so inspiring. He reminds us that shifting frequency is not just a technical act, but an act of courage. Now pause and ask yourself, how many times have you settled into vibrational patterns simply because they were familiar, even if painful? How many times have you avoided risking change because you feared the emptiness that would come with letting go of an old belief? This is the true battlefield of life. Not between you and the world, but between you and the frequency you sustain. And here's a surprise. Every time you choose to sustain gratitude over fear, trust over doubt, joy over resentment, it's not just your life that changes. You also shift the collective field. Tesla asserted that every human being carries a spark of universal energy, and that by shifting your personal frequency, you inevitably influence the network that connects us all. This means your 60 seconds of practice are not insignificant. They reverberate far beyond your wildest imagination. Experiments with meditation groups have shown that when people come together to sustain a vibration of peace, violence rates in entire cities measurably decrease. How else to explain this if not through a collective field that responds to the emitted frequency? Tesla would say these results are just the tip of the iceberg, tentative signs of a universal law still underestimated. And you, have you ever stopped to think that by changing your vibration, you not only transform your life, but also become a point of light in the invisible fabric of humanity? Ultimately, the question isn't whether life responds to frequencies. That's increasingly evident. The real question is, how long will you allow old vibrations to define your reality? How long will you repeat inherited stories, collective fears, limiting beliefs? With every passing minute, you have the chance to shift your tune. Tesla believed that the universe responds instantly. The challenge isn't the speed of the response, but the consistency of the emission. The field simply waits for you to maintain the frequency long enough for the reflection to appear. And perhaps now is the time to experiment. What would happen if, before going to sleep, you spent 60 seconds visualizing a fuller life, feeling gratitude and confidence as if it were already a reality? What would happen if, upon waking, instead of giving in to worries, you took a deep breath and sustained the vibration of joy simply by being alive? Don't wait for the world to change first. It is merely the mirror. Change begins with what you transmit. And here I leave you with one final provocation to pave the way for the next step. If the universe is a field of resonance, and you are both transmitter and receiver, what do you choose to emit from now on? Imagine that every emotion you feel, every thought you entertain, every sensation that recurs within you is like an invisible thread intertwined with thousands of others, forming a network that connects your inner world to the outer world. Nikola Tesla believed that life is not governed by chance, but by subtle forces that obey laws as real as gravity. For him, thoughts and feelings were not fleeting shadows of the mind, but electric and magnetic currents that circulate, interact, and shape reality. When you remember a moment of joy and feel your body expand, it is the heart's field emitting coherent waves. When you lose yourself in fear and your breath contracts, it is these same waves becoming chaotic, as if a radio station had lost its signal. The difference is that in this case, the transmission affects not just you, but the entire field in which you are immersed. And here the central question arises: what have you been transmitting to the universe, consciously or unconsciously, in recent days? Tesla saw humanity as still naive in this regard, because we believe we are victims of external circumstances. But if each person is a living antenna, the reality we see is nothing more than the response to the frequencies we emit. Think about how many times you've desired something, but at the same time, harbored internal feelings of doubt or distrust. The desire seemed clear, but the signal was contaminated, and the universal field responds not to the words spoken, but to the vibration maintained. This is an uncomfortable point, because it forces us to recognize that much of our frustration comes not from without, but from within. The universe doesn't judge, it simply reflects. It's like a perfect mirror. What you transmit sooner or later returns in the form of experience. Now reflect on how repetition reinforces this process. Studies show that over 90% of a day's thoughts are the same as the day before. This means that most people live as if trapped in a resonance cycle. The same worries generate the same emotions, which reinforce the same thoughts, which create the same experiences. It's like listening to the same song on loop day after day, without realizing there's a button to change the station. Tesla believed that this was humanity's true limit, not a lack of external resources, but the inability to realize that we are the ones sustaining the field of repetition. How many times have you wondered why certain situations seem to repeat themselves in your life? Different relationships that end similarly, financial problems that return in new forms, internal sensations that seem to haunt you. Perhaps these are not coincidences, but signs of a dominant frequency that has never been altered. This is where the narrative deepens. If life responds to what you transmit, then any real transformation cannot begin from the outside. There's no point in waiting for the world to change before changing your vibration. The movement is always the opposite. Tesla intuited this when he said that to understand the universe, one must think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. This wasn't just an enigmatic phrase, it was a map. The universe doesn't respond to speeches, but to signals. And these signals are not just in what you do, but in who you are, in what pulses silently within you. An anxious body may say, "I am at peace," but the field transmits restlessness. A mind full of doubts may say, "I believe in success," but the dominant vibration remains fear, and the field returns exactly that. Science is beginning to touch this frontier. Experiments with meditation groups have shown significant reductions in violence rates across entire cities. How can we explain this phenomenon? A small group of people, focused on states of peace and harmony, altered the collective vibration to the point of influencing public safety statistics. Tesla would see this as confirmation of his vision. When multiple transmitters align on the same frequency, the field reorganizes. The same is true for the individual. If you persist in cultivating gratitude daily, you not only change your internal experience, but also reorganize the external field in an invisible and powerful way. This is the science of the invisible, but also the most concrete practice you can adopt. Now consider something that may seem uncomfortable. How many minutes a day do you actually dedicate to consciously cultivating a higher frequency? If you add up the time spent worrying, complaining, and fearing, you'll realize that much of your energy goes towards sustaining incoherent waves. And the universe, like a mirror, reflects precisely these waves back. The habit of complaining may seem harmless, but it creates an energetic signature that repeats itself in similar situations. The habit of doubting attracts new confirmations of doubt. It's as if the field were saying, "You chose this song, so I'm going to play more of it." The question Tesla would ask is, why do we insist on repeating signals we don't want? This reflection leads to a crucial point. Changing frequency is not an isolated act. It's a practice. It's not enough to repeat positive phrases while internally vibrating fear. What generates transformation is coherence. This means aligning thought, emotion, and body in the same direction. A minute of genuine gratitude has more vibrational power than an hour of rote repetition. Tesla knew this intuitively. He asserted that human imagination is the true creative force, but only when accompanied by emotion and clarity. Without emotion, imagination is merely a daydream. With emotion, it becomes a wave that traverses the field and begins to reorganize reality. To make this even more practical, imagine an everyday example. You're stuck in traffic, running late, and you feel anger rising. Your entire body reacts. Tense muscles, shallow breathing, and a racing mind. This is the frequency you transmit. Now, if you decide to take a deep breath and use those minutes as an opportunity to listen to a song you like or reflect on something positive, the external situation doesn't change, but the frequency does. And little by little, this change accumulates in other moments of life. A boss's criticism, which previously felt like aggression, can become an invitation to growth. Someone's silence, which previously felt like rejection, can be perceived as a space for introspection. Nothing changes outside, but everything changes inside, and this inside reorganizes the outside. Tesla saw this as the greatest human power, the ability to choose one's vibration in any circumstance. He didn't deny difficulties, but he believed they were temporary responses to previous frequencies. Changing frequency is like planting a new seed. The harvest doesn't come instantly, but the transformation has already begun, invisibly. Patience is part of the practice because the universal field responds precisely, but respects the timing of consistency. The question remains, are you willing to sustain a new frequency long enough to see the reflection change? Stories throughout humanity confirm this view. How many inventors, artists, and visionaries have been called crazy for holding ideas that had not yet been reflected in the outside world? Tesla was one of them. He saw wireless power transmission towers when no one believed in them. He spoke of global communication when it seemed like fantasy. If he had waited for external reality to confirm his vision, he would have given up. But his internal frequency sustained a field that, decades later, became real. This is the lesson. External reality is not the judge. It is the delayed mirror. What you hold today will be reflected tomorrow. What you repeat now shapes the field to come. And here's the final provocation of this section. How many times have you given up on something because the mirror didn't immediately reflect what you desired? How many times have you abandoned a practice, an idea, a dream, simply because the reflection seemed to take a long time? Tesla would say, this is the greatest human error, giving up before the field has time to reorganize reality. The universe doesn't respond to haste. It responds to consistency. Each minute of conscious practice is a thread thrown into the invisible fabric. The more threads you throw, the stronger the pattern becomes. And at some point, the mirror has no choice but to return the image you held. So if life is a reflection of your vibration, what have you been reflecting? What have you been transmitting in your most ordinary moments, those when no one is watching? Because it is in these silent moments that the field organizes itself. Tesla believed that the future of humanity depended on each individual's ability to take responsibility for their own frequency, not as a burden, but as a privilege. Life is not random, it is responsive. And if this is true, each day is an opportunity to tune into a new music. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine what your life would be like if every choice, every thought, and every emotion weren't just automatic responses, but conscious decisions that shape the invisible field around you. Imagine waking up tomorrow with the clarity that reality isn't a fixed weight on your shoulders, but a malleable reflection of your own vibration. This is the invitation Nikola Tesla left us as a legacy, to recognize that the mind and heart are not just parts of human biology, but cosmic engines capable of reorganizing the fabric of existence. And if this is true, then you are not a victim of external circumstances, but a silent creator who carries within you the key to change. What will you do with this key? The idea may seem abstract, but its application is profoundly practical. Tesla believed that humanity's greatest secrets lay not in visible objects, but in the invisible forces that sustain them. And among these forces is the vibration of thought. If every emotion is a frequency, if every thought is an electrical wire thrown into the universe, then the life you live is the sum of signals you've sustained for days, months, and years. The universal field doesn't judge, it only reflects. And this understanding opens the door to the most powerful strategic plan you can apply, transforming your frequency into daily practice until it becomes second nature. The first step of this plan is simple, but it requires courage, taking full responsibility for your vibration. This doesn't mean blaming yourself for mistakes or burdening yourself with failures. It simply means recognizing that, if reality is a mirror, you always have the chance to change the image reflected. Responsibility isn't condemnation, it's freedom. Instead of waiting for the world to change, you understand that it's your change that initiates the reflection. Ask yourself, what frequency have I been sustaining in the most ordinary moments of my life? How often do I automatically complain? How often do I harbor silent fears that I'm not even aware of? The mere act of observing is the beginning of transformation. The second step is to create a daily attunement ritual. It doesn't need to be long or complex. Tesla said the universe responds instantly, so even a minute can be enough to ignite the spark. Choose a fixed time. It could be upon waking or before bed, and set aside 60 seconds to close your eyes. Breathe deeply and cultivate a specific emotion: gratitude, trust, love, expansion. The secret isn't in the words you repeat, but in what you feel. A phrase without emotion is an empty sound, but a thought accompanied by genuine emotion is a coherent wave capable of traversing the universal field. Imagine, visualize, feel. This minute, repeated daily, becomes the foundation of a new frequency. The third step is to sustain this vibration in your daily life. There's no point in practicing gratitude in the morning and complaining the rest of the day. The field responds to what you transmit most of the time, so practice it in small moments. When facing traffic, when dealing with criticism, when talking to someone difficult, breathe, remember the frequency you chose, and return to it. It will seem difficult at first, but like any muscle, vibration strengthens with practice. Each time you choose to return to a higher frequency, even in the midst of chaos, you send the field a signal of consistency, and the field responds. The fourth step is to journal. Grab a notebook and every day write down 3 things you're grateful for. Don't write mechanically, but relive each memory, feel every detail. This simple exercise is one of the most powerful shortcuts to shifting your frequency because it forces your mind to align with your heart. Tesla believed that imagination and emotion, when combined, create waves capable of reorganizing reality. When you write, you don't just think, you feel, and this feeling is what transforms. The fifth step is to expand. When you feel your practice is solid, share it with someone. It could be a friend, a family member, or even a small group. Explain how you've been training your vibration and invite that person to practice with you. Studies have shown that when several people sustain the same frequency, the effect multiplies. The collective field is altered more intensely, creating results that go beyond the individual. This isn't mysticism, it's resonance. And Tesla would say that humanity's true revolution will only begin when we learn to consciously harness this collective power. The sixth step is to reframe difficulties. Instead of seeing problems as signs of bad luck or punishment, start seeing them as tests of consistency. The universe will always ask if you truly chose the new frequency, or if it was just a passing experiment. When obstacles arise, use them as opportunities to strengthen your vibration. If you feel fear, choose confidence. If you feel doubt, choose gratitude. If you feel anger, choose to breathe and return to center. It's not easy, but each time you consciously choose, you strengthen your new vibrational identity. Problems cease to be monsters and become portals. The seventh step is to cultivate patience. Reality doesn't change overnight, but each day you maintain the correct frequency. You plant invisible seeds that soon germinate. Tesla knew that the field is mathematically precise. Whatever you emit returns. But just as a seed needs time to grow, Vibration needs consistency to be reflected in major changes. Don't be fooled by the initial silence. Change has already begun in the invisible, and sooner or later, it will be reflected. This plan isn't theoretical. It's practical, direct, accessible, and above all, it's transformative. If you apply each step with discipline and passion, your life will not only change but will gain a new quality of meaning. You will no longer feel at the mercy of fate and will begin to see yourself as an active part of creation. Tesla reminded us that the future of humanity lies in learning to control its own frequencies with the same precision with which we control electricity. This future begins with you now, the moment you decide to practice. Now, think about the life you desire. Close your eyes and visualize it. It could be peace in relationships, financial prosperity, balanced health, or inner clarity. Feel it as if it were already real. Breathe and hold that sensation for 60 seconds. At that very moment, you are sending a signal to the universal field. The reflection may not appear immediately, but it has already begun to form. And the more times you repeat it, the stronger this reflection will become. The choice is before you. Continue repeating the same signals from yesterday or start emitting a new frequency today. In the end, the greatest lesson isn't that you have the power to change the world. It's that you've always been the world you wanted to change. Life doesn't happen against you, it responds to you. And if this is true, then every minute you dedicate to cultivating a higher vibration is a victory not only for you, but for all of humanity. The collective field is waiting for new signals. Perhaps yours is the missing link that triggers changes greater than you can imagine. So don't let this moment slip away as just another video or another inspiring idea. Turn it into practice. Tonight, before you go to sleep, consciously choose the frequency you want to cultivate. Breathe, visualize, feel. Tomorrow, repeat, and then again, until it becomes part of who you are. Tesla believed that the future belonged to those who mastered this art, and that future can begin with you now. If this content touched you in any way, if it provoked reflection or stirred emotions, I invite you to continue this journey with me. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapters of this profound exploration of energy, consciousness, and transformation. Like this video so it reaches more people, and if you feel it in your heart, share your experience in the comments. You can write openly or even anonymously if you prefer. Your story isn't just a rant, it's a real contribution to the collective field we're creating together here. Your voice matters, your vibration matters, and this is the time to let that energy resonate.